Blessings. Are you going out to vote today?
Yes, I'm gonna go out to vote today, but I'm not really sure about, our candidates. Bernie is a funny character. After watching that Amazon premiere about the MK Ultra and the drugs and all of that, how they killed us. The people that was around with Martin Luther King in those days, some of them were CIA agents. So I don't know about the agenda. That's why Bernie kind of makes me funny when he says he doesn't believe in reparations for black people.
Yeah.
But
like this week, you've been kind of dodging the reparations question. Senator Harris and Senator Warren have both kind of spoken out and said that they agree with some form of reparations.
Well, the question is, I'm not dodging the question. The question is, what do we mean by reparations? I mean, it seems to me a lot of people mean a lot of different things. To my mind, it means that we have to deal with the fact that there is enormous disparity between the black community and the white community, and that issue has got to be addressed. And I've indicated to you some of the ways that I think it should be addressed.
Well, I think they mean some type of economic empowerment to the African descendants of slaves.
But what does that mean, economic empowerment? I just talked about the fact that I would do my best to change the banking system to make sure that we end racism, that we pay attention to distressed communities, that people get the loans they need to make the investments they need.
What about straight cash payouts?
No.
How much you want,
You
Sean?
agree with that? Why don't you agree with that?
Well, first of all, you mean just a check to every African American?
Yes.
Well, then there's a check to every Native American who were nearly wiped out when the settlers first came here. I think the way we go forward is to build America together. There are distressed communities, white communities, there are distressed Latino communities. Right now, what you have is a government owned and controlled by big money interests who worries about Wall Street and the drug companies. We're going to change that. And we're going to pay attention to the needs of working families and low-income families in this country in a way that you have never seen.
But this government has also systemically oppressed us in a way that they haven't oppressed other communities, through slavery, through segregation, now mass incarceration. And I think it should be something done specifically for African Americans.
Well, and all of those issues, all right, we are going to deal with mass incarceration. And we're going to invest, I think at the end of the day, if we end the discrimination that exists in financial services, in healthcare, in education, if we guarantee health care to all people, if we, and we're working on a particular program, make sure that every person in this country has a job, because there's enough work to be done dealing with climate change, dealing with our crumbling infrastructure, I would suggest to you that not only the African American community, but every community will be a hell of a lot better off than they are today.
Do you think Democrats really believe in reparations for African Americans, or is it just a good talking point for this campaign cycle?
I don't want to speak for other people.
Is that Bernie is super liberal. Not every black person is super liberal. Now, when I listen to Bernie talk, two words I want you to pay attention to. I want you to catch these two words in Bernie's discussion. He always uses these two words all the time, especially when the issue of blackness comes up. Bernie is not comfortable with black people. Let me just say that right now. Bernie Sanders ain't comfortable with black people. And that's where you start seeing his old white male privilege kind of popping out, where he's getting pissed off because black people ain't going with his agenda. He's not able to sweet talk them the way he could have done so, say, 15 years ago. So if you pay attention, watch his body language. Whenever Bernie Sanders is asked about reparations, he starts to get really pissed off and annoyed. He starts to, what do you mean? What do you mean? He repeats himself. The last 2 or 3 interviews I've heard where Bernie Sanders is asked about reparations, every single time he says the same thing. He says, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? And so he said it in the first CNN interview. They said, Bernie Sanders, what do you think about reparations? He said, well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then that's how you deflect. You avoid the question by saying, what does that mean? Then the next interview, they bring up reparations. Well, what does that mean? What does that mean? And then the third interview, the Breakfast Club today, I saw they brought up Charlemagne, brings up reparations. Charlemagne asked him some good questions. He said, what about reparations? He's like, well, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Like this week, you've been kind of dodging the reparations question. Senator Harris and Senator Warren have both kind of spoken out and said that they agree with some form of reparations.
Well, the question is, I'm not dodging the question. The question is, what do we mean by reparations? I mean,
I'm like, motherfucker, you done had 3 interviews to go find out what it means. How are you going to be stupid in interview 1, interview 2, and interview 3? How are you going to be dumb? You either are dumb or you playing dumb. You are dumb or you playing dumb. Because I think the first time, if you didn't understand the question, people could have got that. People were like, okay, you don't get it. Let us explain it to you. Right? The second time, people be like, okay, well, you should have got it the first time, but let us explain it to you. But by the time you get to the third time, you see that that becomes a strategy. That is a political strategy. If you're repeating the same thing over and over again, that means that you're not really answering the question. You're repeating the strategy. Another couple of trigger words that Bernie Sanders likes to use, and I'm not dissing Bernie Sanders, by the way. You can vote for him if you want to. I'm not telling you to vote for him and not to vote for him. I'm just going to tell you what he does.
I think the worst thing that we could do with the coronavirus is tell people that they should be afraid of it. Remember, your body has what's called your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal gland. If you place your body in fight or flight mode, you're taking away what's called like your force field. You know, in the Quran it says Allah is the best of all planners, the best of all knowers. So God has already gave you a protection against everything. The main thing of your protection is your body can defend against anything. But if you go into stress mode, you go into fear mode, you've already eliminated your immune process. You started what they call in your white blood cells, the mitochondria in your white blood cells, you start absorbing all the nutrients in it because you're in a fight or flight mode, which then makes your immune system deficient.
Hey, I hear you, King.
You never have fear of no disease, fear of nothing.
King, I hear you.
All this money from being the person that's providing these cures for people.
Yes. Mm-hmm. He didn't believe in vaccines, correct?
No, not at all.
I remember he said that.
Not at all. He felt like even the flu shot, he said whatever they say they're trying to prevent, they most likely putting it inside of you. Nah, he was not a vaccine person at all.
Even today, I don't go to doctors, hospitals for x-rays and what do you call that word for, just to say what's wrong with me. And then I will diagnosis. I'll get the bush, the herbs, just as Mama used to. Mama saved me from going blind because she knew what herbs to put in my eyes to save my sight, bandage it up for a few days, you know. So many things I can think of. Mama, because of her spirituality, her connection with Africa, with the ancestors,
very much.
that has kept us going. I strongly believe that.
I believe so.
Here I find, and not just here, home as well, because I have a sister who will ask me to send her paracetamols or medicines from this country, which I wouldn't take. I could get them free and I won't take it. But she wants to say, but Mama, what would Mama do? Yeah. Why did you try this? Why did you try? Well, nobody with that again. Why not? And that really disturbs me because it works. It worked then and it works now. And we need it more now than then. I mean, the herbs, the prayers, the culture, because all this, what we're talking about is our culture. And it's so easy for us to just discard it and take on other people's cultures, their medicines, their food, their way of life. Even though we know it's destroying us, it's not good for us, it's not good for our children, we'll gladly take it on. That really, really bothers me. And then we wonder why we're in the situation that we're in.